Hello, everybody. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Martin Lovers. I'm the editor-in-chief of Supply Chain Movement, and I'm also the chief trend watcher of Supply Chain Media. You might also know me as the architect of the IT supply map. So welcome to this live webinar, the next hour, and we have an after talk afterwards. So welcome. As you see on the left, that's me. As I introduce myself, I'm Martin Lovers, so I will be moderating this afternoon. So we will have a live webinar about closing the gap of digitalization in supply chain. So next to me, I have Mathijs Slange. He's Vice President Sales and Marketing Europe of Flexport. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Maybe you can tell me a bit more about your history. What's your responsibility, and tell me a bit more about Flexport for one thing.
Yeah, no, perfect. So I'm VP Sales and Marketing for Flexport in Europe. I've been doing that for like 4 years. So my role is to make sure that Flexport Europe, we have very ambitious growth targets, that we listen very carefully to what our customers have to say, and try to grow our organization in line with the large amount of customers that we have and that we are onboarding in Europe on a regular basis. Part of Flexport, so maybe very short about Flexport, started 10 years ago. So we were founded in San Francisco with our mission to make global trade easy for everyone. I'll go into that in a moment. But if you ask me, so who's Flexport? What are we? Then we're always a little bit in the middle, right? On the one hand side, I always say we are a freight forwarder. We would be actually a terrible freight forwarder without all of the tech that we have. So we are, you could call it a digital freight forwarder. On the other hand, we are a SaaS company, so we have our tech, and we would be a terrible SaaS company without the freight forwarding knowledge that we have. So we combine actually the best of both worlds. So customers come to us if they need to ship their goods from A to B, either via air, via ocean. They need to get their customs done. They need to get their trucking done. They need to get their insurance. They need to get capital. All of those things is what we take care of for our customers. For the last.
So if you talk about the market, so your competitors are in a traditional way, DSV, Maersk, Kuehne+Nagel, the digital freight forwarders. On the other hand, you have the newcomers, the startups and scale-ups, and in Europe you have Schiphol and Cargo. So that's the field you're playing in.
Correct. Yes. So we have those are the ones, the more traditional or incumbents, if you will. The carriers, and on the other hand, also the other digital players. Yes.
Yeah, right. And last few weeks, Flexport is in the news. I think people in the logistics and then the freight forward cannot have been ignoring this. So maybe can you comment on that short, in a brief sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. And it has been quite hectic weeks over the last 3-4 weeks, because we have seen quite a few changes there. So. Maybe to give a little bit of background here. So our mission, what we try to do is we try to see if we can bring the B2C experience, if you will, to a B2B market. That's what we want to do. We want to give our customers, like the experience that normally B2C customers get. We figured it would be very good to actually hire one of the greatest B2C leaders in our industry, right? Dave Clark, also coming from Amazon, and so that's what happened last year. And from a product development perspective, that has really brought us a lot. I think we've made some massive steps there. But on the other hand, we're also learning that the B2B market is a little bit different there than the B2C market, right? And customers are probably a little bit less forgiving there. So we had a lot of customers telling us, "Hey, you become a little bit too much tech focused. We like that human interaction, right? So we really want to have the best of both worlds." So we saw a little bit of a mismatch with where we were going and what we were doing. So we have to act swiftly, and that's what we've done. And on top of that, the market right now is obviously in a very tough spot. Demand going down quite drastically, and every company, and just like our company as well, need to act to do that. The only difference is there that we have really a lot of engineers, of tech developers in our organization. Almost 1/3 of our organization is in the product or tech development part, and specifically in a downwards market, that can hurt you quite a bit. So also on that one, we have to act swiftly. But to your point, yes, there's a lot of there's a lot of news and also a lot of rumors and gossip actually around there.
But you have a lot of tech people, but I can imagine that you're still a digital freight forwarder. So I think you will remain to have a lot of tech people in your company.
100%. Yes.
Yeah, right.
So we will always have that is the DNA of our organization as well. So we will always have that. We're continuously building our products and making sure that we listen good to in a good way to our customer, and actually bring that back into the products that we have. So we will not completely change course there. No.
Okay. All right. So getting back, for the audience, so this webinar will be recorded. The PDF will be made available afterwards. You can ask questions along the way. So you can use the chat function on the right-hand side, but I prefer that you use the Q&A functionality on the right-hand side. You see text bubbles on the right side. You can ask questions, and if these questions are in line of the conversation I'm having with Mathijs, I will ask these questions right away. So you can have your interaction, or if not, I will reserve this question for the Q&A at the end. So there will be a Q&A, at the end of the hour, I would say. But afterwards, we will have also an after talk in the lounge. So Mathijs and myself will be there. So we will have an extra 30 minutes to ask questions about this. So after this, I will put off the camera, and Mathijs will also do that. Basically. So you can focus on the presentation, and we'll stay live in the audience and in the conversation with you. So all right. So first, I would like to show you this. So what our CEOs talk about in their quarterly earnings meetings with analysts. So this is quite interesting overview of the topics. So basically, a company has scraped the text files of the conversations CEOs are having with financial analysts in their quarterly earnings calls, and these are the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. So interesting to see that ChatGPT is out of nowhere on the agenda of the CEO. So that's highlighted in yellow, and AI is also very important coming up. And emissions and sustainability is also highlighted. And on the ultimate right side, you see the economic uncertainty. So this is the overview of Q1. And this is CEO's topics in Q2 last quarter. Also generative AI, but also reshoring is popping up. AI still hot, and shortages remains a hotkey, and supply chain and sustainability is key. Mathijs, do you recognize these kind of buzzwords in your conversations?
Yeah, no, definitely reshoring. That's definitely one that's popping up more. Obviously, we've been talking about that for a very long time already. It's not a new topic, but we do see that it's materializing a lot more right now. So certainly that sustainability as well. Also a topic that has been, like on the agenda and has been floated in many different discussions that we have, but it's getting more and more traction as well, and it's becoming a very serious topic when we discuss tenders or when we discuss future cooperations with our customers as well. Yes.
Right. So first, I have to show this slide on behalf of Flexport. Anything to comment on this?
No, this is just from a legal perspective. We want to make sure that everything that we say here or that I say there is based on the current beliefs and expectations and assumptions. So I think it's just a legal or compliance element that we put in there.
No problem. Okay. So could you explain what your mission is? You briefly touched upon it earlier, but maybe you can repeat it. So what is the mission of Flexport?
Yeah. So our mission is to make global trade easy for everyone, or you could also say make global commerce easy for everyone. That has been our mission from the get-go. And that mission actually implies that global trade is not easy at the moment, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's fair. We believe that there's a lot of elements that make global trade not extremely easy right now, and they're also linked, obviously, to the topic of today.
Yeah.
So we tend to divide them into four categories. Firstly, we see a lot of manual processes taking place. So there's a lot of manual steps that are actually taking place to get the goods from one location to the other.
Mhm.
Because of all these manual processes, there's a lot of room for error, and there's a lot of room for miscommunication there. So the second point, what you see is that there's a lot of reactive management taking place, a lot of firefighting, if you will, because of all these manual processes. So we have manual processes, reactive management. Then the third one, related also to the reactive management, is there's a lot of static docs and a lot of static data actually flying around. So that's data that is not easily, let's say, digitized or can be analyzed. So if you have static data sitting in a PDF or in any other format, then it makes historical data analysis almost impossible, right? And historical data analysis is also required to make sure that you be a little bit more proactive in your management than reactive. Last but not least, siloed communication, right? So we see that specific parts in the supply chain talk very well to each other, right? When they're talking about, let's say, what needs to happen to export your goods from Europe to the US. But when it goes, when you talk about the other side of the equation, so either in the US or different other parts of the organization, we see that communication is not always flowing very well, right? So creates a lot of noise, and noise is never a good let's say indicator for your if you want to make global trade easy. So those are the four elements: manual processes, reactive management, static docs and data, and siloed communication, that we believe make global trade not very easy at the moment, and what we try to tackle, and what we see that companies also try to tackle with their digitization strategy.
But if you look at your audience, and if you look at global trade, there are a lot of parties involved. If you look at only ocean shipping, you have, of course, the cargo owners, you have the ocean carriers, you have the ports, you have the customs, the freight forwarders in between. So there are a lot of parties involved. So who's your main audience? Who are your customers?
Yeah, so we always say, like, our customers is actually everyone who is involved in that supply chain. So that is the customs authority, or the broker, or the trucking company, or the warehouse company, or indeed the factory in the other country. So all of those players in the supply chain, we want to connect them all together. That's what we want to do. So we have the carrier as our customer, but we also have, like, the cargo owner as our customer. And that's what we try to do, is we try to treat everyone who is actually active in that supply chain as a customer. And we want to make sure that these are all talking and operating together, because that's the only way how we can actually make global trade easy.
And if you look at the traditional freight forwarding, mostly they are talking about shipping lanes, either by ocean or by road. Yeah, it's shipping lanes. But
Yeah,
you are creating a platform to connect all these parties involved.
yeah.
And then we get to the topic at hand. You are talking about a digitalization gap. So can you explain, why is there a digitalization gap?
Yeah, yeah. So firstly, and I think, Martijn, we discussed that before as well. 11 years ago, when I was at a conference, we were talking about the same topics actually as we're talking about today, right? So I would actually have a lot of similar themes in my presentation that as I have today. We called it big data at that time, but it was still more or less the same. What are we going to do with all that data, and how are we going to actually make sure that we can make something out of that?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you fast forward to where we are today, then I think that we definitely made some improvements, but we're still not 100% where we should be. I would say I've given the examples just a minute ago. but we are seeing that there's some front runners there. So there are companies that are actually taking this very seriously and willing to invest in it, and are actually seeing that flywheel actually generating a little bit of speed right now, right? So we do anticipate, and we see that right now already, that the front runners, those who are investing in it and really taking digitalization seriously, are going to actually, like going to create more of a gap with those who don't. And those who respond to fail, or who do not respond, will fail in the end, right? And I think there's multiple studies also here, like we mentioned, some of the consulting companies that have actually shown that, and where you see that those are actually innovating, are really, like benefiting right now from digitization and AE automation. So we expect that gap is going to increase quite drastically, not only right now, but specifically in the upcoming years.
Yeah, and before this webinar, we had a brief chat, and you still are in the process of doing tenders. So, do companies where you pitch within your tenders, um, value what you are doing and see it differently, or are they still doing their tender process in the traditional way?
Yeah, I think it's definitely both. So on the one hand, we see that there's no company who doesn't say, when you're talking to them, digitalization is the future, right?
Hmm.
They're all mentioning that. But we see in their tenders and also how they're responding to that, that there's a still quite a little bit of a gap between what they say and how they act to it. Let me
Hmm.
give you some examples there. So we have customers that we work with right now who say, like, we do need to further change. We need to further digitalize our strategy, our supply chain setup, and we're also willing to invest in that. We're willing to pay a little bit more than we would normally do. We also
Okay.
see companies who say, like, we really, really need to digitize, but you're 7% too expensive,
Yeah.
right? And then you should question, like, are you truly, like, investing in digitalization there, or are you only saying it and not really? And when it comes to, like, when it comes to the final decision, you tend to go for a more traditional one.
So if you look at the graph on the upper left side of this slide, you see the green part, the new digital business models. I think
Yes.
your customers or your prospects should value that maybe Flexport or a digital freight platform could be a lever to create new business models, so that maybe they don't see the new future or their new future yet.
Yes, I think, and that's our goal. That's what we try to do, right? So we try to open the eyes of our customer a little bit further, right? So for those who have already or understand already how and what they need to do, we guide them, we help them. And for those who don't, we try to challenge a little bit more, and we try to say, like, well, what if you don't, right? And
Yeah.
then you get more into that red part, I would say. So yeah, we see it also a little bit, like, as our task when we're talking to the customers, to yeah, to make them aware of what will happen if you don't do it.
Okay, but maybe we to dig deeper. Maybe you can explain what are the reasons why supply chain digitalization is lagging.
Yeah. So firstly, we see, as I said, right, we see a lot of companies are doing really great things there, and we will give some examples of that. But basically, we see a couple of elements or a couple of reasons um, why the digitalization is lagging behind. And the first one, and we addressed that already a little bit, is neglection of the network effect, right? So supply chain means, like, every element of the supply chain is important in this one. So by focusing on a specific part in your supply chain only, will not give you the benefit that you would normally have. So you have to make sure that you do integrate and incorporate that customs broker and that warehouse and the trucking company and the factory on the other side. Everything needs to be connected. not from day one, right? But it needs to be, you always need to have in the back of your head, right? How am I going to expand my network
Mhm.
of digitized processes? Very important. Then the second one, what we see is we see a lot of companies who actually treat visibility a little bit as the end goal. So now I can see exactly what's going on with my goods, which is fine, which is really good, but that's only the beginning, actually, right? So if visibility, if that's considered as the end goal, then like everything that happens once you know what's happening with your goods, if you lose the impact if you don't actually register who is taking action. So I see that my goods are stuck in Singapore, and then all of the actions that I'm going to take to get my goods out of Singapore are out there in the open. It's either done by email to someone else, or I call someone. So you immediately lose that the impact of your digitization strategy because you only focus on that visibility part.
Yeah, and what you see right now is also that especially consumers are, wanting to know more about expected time of arrival, ETA. So, it's ingrained of the customer expectations, and it will
Yes.
also be the case in the B2B environment.
So it's a good example, Martijn. So if you look at consumers, right? If you order something and someone is going to give you visibility, and the visibility will show, hey, on Friday, I'm going to be at your doorstep at 4 o'clock. That's already a very big step, right? If the company is not going to make that time slot, so we're not going to be there at 4 o'clock, you as a consumer, you're going to be angry. You don't like that, right? If you're going to say, like, I'm not going to reach the time slot at 4 o'clock, however, I'm going to be there the next day at 9 o'clock, you immediately take a little bit of that annoyance away, right? Because then you understand what the solution is. Still, you don't like it, but at least you have more insights and more information about what is going to happen, and that creates more stability in you as a consumer, but also in your supply chain.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's the other ones. I think there's a deficit of talent. I will touch upon that a little bit later. There's a few very easy ones there, right? Specifically when you talk about dirty data and data silos. So it's obviously a no-brainer that if the data that you put into your digitization model is not the best one, then you're going to end up with a couple of consequences of that. First one, everyone in your organization is going to question the data, and they need to do deep dives into analyzing and cleaning up the data, because the first thing they will say is, this doesn't sound right, or this doesn't look right. If that's going to happen, then there's two consequences of that. The first one is the decision is not going to be made because actually you don't have good data, or the decision is going to be delayed, right?
Yep.
Both cases are not what you want. So you have to make sure that the data that you put in there is of a super high quality and can be cross, double, triple checked with different other sources, so you can also take out the errors there. A last one that I want to highlight here is the opting for the big bang approach. So on the one hand, like, it is important what we see, and this is not specifically in supply chain, but actually with every IT or tech project, is that once companies say, like, we really want to do this, we need to do this right now, we have not given this our attention, so we are going to actually invest in this. And then the wish list starts, right? With all of the different parties involved, who have their own wishes and demands of what the system should do. And then this overarching, like, beast of, let's say, digitization solution is going to be proposed to players like us, where they say, like, hey, you need to have everything, and you need to have everything from the get-go, right? From the start. Our response to that is always like, we can't, like, we can definitely do that together with you, but not from day one. And I think it's also a very risky strategy to see if you can find a party, I'm yet to find them, who can actually do that from day one. So going for that big bang approach, going for everything at once, the big Christmas list, is one of the areas where, or one of the elements why companies are actually then not making the right steps and the right progress from the get-go.
What I see in a similar line is that a lot of the bigger companies are feeling hijacked, that they are forced to get their ERP environment into the cloud, and it will take them millions and years. So sometimes that's also hampering them to get the real value of the more innovative steps to improve their supply chain. It's like the year to K problem. All the companies needed to implement ERP. So we
Yes.
see that also on the other side.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean, the
yep,
bigger the investment, the more people will need to have a say on this.
yep.
So, like, I think,
I have discussed in an earlier webinar, how to get out of the straitjacket of ERP, by implementing a data lake. But that's not the topic of this afternoon. But so maybe you can explain how to get over this possible hump.
yeah. Yeah, so first, and I think this is important, and this is what we also show. Like, this is more about us, also how we are doing that, right? So what's important there, that if you want to digitalize your supply chain, or your company, if you will, then you have to be super aware that there's going to be a hump in the beginning, and that hump is caused by you're first going to insource, like, a lot of the activities. Then you're going to see, like, which part of those can I digitize,
Hmm.
but that will not be ready from day one. So in the beginning, you will have, on the one hand, a lot of cost and resources focused on actually trying to digitize your process. But at the same time, simultaneously, you have to make sure that your customers do not suffer from this, right? Or that they get the experience that you want, that they need. So there's still a lot of manual processes taking place. And the idea is obviously to replace all that manual work with your digitized solution. But in the beginning, that means you actually have to invest in both. And that can go very, like, that can, the cost can go up relatively fast. I mean, we are actually experiencing that right now, right? As we speak, as you're hearing also about our organization. But this is an important one. You need to get over that hub, where you're investing while you still have all of your other resources as well, before you can actually start, like, now that I have all the data, I can start fully automating the processes. I can let the data work for me. So it's important to get over that hub first. But
But
it's
maybe, yeah, but maybe you should add another graph in this visual.
yeah.
This is about the cost. What about the revenue? I think you're talking about a new business model. I hope and expect that this digitalization project, this transformation, will give them something new, market share, new extra revenue, or whatever, new markets. So hopefully, in the upside, in a steady phase, maybe your revenue will stay steady. But afterwards, maybe because of the lower cost, you can add something new, something extra.
Yeah, and yeah, it's a good call out. But that's indeed, like, you're doing this with always, like, the long-term view on that hockey stick, as you called it as well, where you see
Yeah.
your revenue exponentially going through the roof. So what we're doing, for instance, we have just this year, we're opening up our platform for players, or for customers who do not want to necessarily ship only with Flexport. They say, I have my incumbent as well, and I'm never going to give all of my business to one party. I mean, by the way, I wouldn't do that either, right? So you spread your risk there. I do like your platform and how you're digitizing my whole supply chain. Um, so if I can make use of that, by for the other customers as well, or for the other LSPs that I use, the logistics service providers as well, that will be excellent. We're testing that right now. We have, like, we've built that over the last years. We're testing that with our first 30 customers, and that is the actual flywheel that you will see. That is also where a lot of the revenue in the future will definitely come from, because that's uh, hasn't been done before.
No, it's a similar way like Amazon. They had their own platform selling out of their own warehouses, whereas now I think more than half is through the platform, but shipped directly from other third-party sellers.
Yes.
through the Amazon platform.
Yeah, exactly. It's a network effect that we
Yeah, right.
just discussed.
Okay, but maybe there's a flywheel. We talk about best practices, but after with this, first, how do you get momentum? Maybe you can
Yes.
explain.
Yeah. So I think, like if we look at best practices, and this is specifically relevant right now, the the market out there is tough, right? Demand is
Mhm.
going down. There's more players, actually, more companies fighting for the same business. So the while the pond is getting smaller, the number of fishers that are in there is still relatively the same. So it's going to be more difficult to actually keep your market share, grow it even, or at least make sure that you don't lose it. And it's all about rapid response there. You need to make sure that you can respond rapidly to what's actually happening out there. If you want to do that, you have to make sure that you have your whole model in place. So firstly, super high level amount of data details, granularity. So you need to know exactly what's going on. Secondly, that data doesn't need to be only granular, but also needs to be of a super high quality, right? Remember the dirty data that I just mentioned.
Yep.
Then you need to have historical data to not only to signal trends and to look at developments. I mean, all of the AI is based on learning from data from the past, right? So that is very important to have that historical data. So that's the data element of it. On the other hand, you also need to have robust processes within your organization that can actually handle those changes, right? So if the data tells you you actually should not use this port or this routing or whatsoever, you need to have the processes in place to actually also execute on this, right?
Hmm.
And all of the actions that you take then to actually make sure that the changes are happening, they need to be centrally visible and trackable for all of those members in your network. And that's really how you build that end-to-end integration. So what we see is the best practices or companies are doing this right are focusing on these two things. They want to make sure that they respond rapidly to what's happening in the market, because they know if their products are not going to be there in time, then they're going to lose out to their competitors. And they know that they need to focus on data and processes at the same time.
So on the left hand side, you're talking about data. You have raw data, and some people are talking. Data is a new oil, and I say, it's raw oil. It has to be refined and etc. So in a consumer world, you have Trustpilot and scores. How do you include it in your platform? I can imagine that you can also have some trust kind of scores in your platform.
Um, Yeah, that's interesting. Well, firstly, well, there's two things there. Firstly, we are the platform that we use. There's no other platform, right? So
Mhm.
all of our people use our platform. All of our customers are on the same platform. There's no like a customer platform and a Flexport platform. So they work in the same in the same way. So all of the feedback that we get from our customers, which is like your Trustpilot internally, is directly fed into our model, so we can really make sure that we use that in the most and the best way possible. Now, interestingly, we try to see what can we do with data, and specifically also with our customers. So we recently actually looked at Trustpilot for a customer, where we actually looked at what is the Trustpilot score of this individual customer, and is there a relation between the Trustpilot score and specifically also the keywords that are used in the Trustpilot score, where, for instance, delays or like miscommunication are actually mentioned, and can we link that to revenue, for instance, for that company, right? So if we see that the Trustpilot score is going down, and then let's say the supply chain related keywords is going up and the sales is going down, then that's obviously a super interesting case to build together with that customer to say, like, hey, listen, the digitalization strategy, or actually working with us, goes a little bit further than purely looking at rates. It's actually looking at like what can the potential impact be for my complete supply chain. So yeah, we try to use these examples at all times to see, like, where and how can we use the data in the best possible way to make the life of our customers easier.
That's interesting because there's a lot of talk about how to use AI, etc. And we all should know that computers are good in finding correlation. That's a lot about statistics, etc. But we still need the human brain to have the causality, cause and effect. And this example is a great example of correlation versus causality.
Yeah.
But maybe you can express some more interesting findings in the three case studies. Maybe you can go to the first case study.
Yeah. So like it's always good to talk about digitalization, and then also talk about the theory and the strategy behind it. But so it's giving some concrete examples in this one helps as well. Yeah. So the first one. So what you see is a couple of examples and then specific elements, and we try to come up with some different ones to give a picture which is as complete as possible. So the first company was definitely one of the challenges was the invoice accuracy, right? So they had no clue how to link the invoice that they would get in to the agreement that they have made with the carrier, etc. So they said, like, we're spending an awful lot of time on that, and the accuracy is really, really low. Additionally, we don't really know which container is coming in when, or which pallet is coming in when, and how we need to deal with that. So the whole inbound planning was done a little bit ad hoc and a little bit on first come, first serve. And then the last one was like they really wanted to see what is the status of all of my goods, everything that's out there. So we try to see if we could come up with a solution for them. So firstly, making sure that their inbound process was super clear, right? So they could know exactly when is which container coming in, when does which container need to go back, who is informed about it, etc. So it's not only the visibility, but also making sure that everyone is involved in the operations is actually also aware of what's happening. So very concrete example of how these companies are actually continuously improving a small part of their whole network by trying to see what they can digitize and automate. We connected the invoices exactly to the orders, which allowed also finance teams to check if let's say the invoice and the order were actually the right one. This takes a couple of seconds now, where it used to take minutes, 15 minutes, half an hour to find out what did we actually agree. So massive savings there.
But lately, especially in the last few years, a lot of companies were confronted with huge surcharges in this logistic field.
Yes.
And it is a pain in the neck for a lot of companies. So
Yes.
you can make sense of it more quickly.
And it will not get easier, right? We will see different surcharges being introduced into the market. We will see that rates or agreements, like will change, even if there's longer term commitments in place. So it is extremely difficult to find out, like where, what did I agree actually for this specific type of shipment. So the complexity will not get less. So it is important to get this process completely under control. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe to the next case.
Yeah, so the next case is also, that's more in the apparel business. And what's here important is, like as I said already, like if you don't get your goods, this is a cutthroat competitive market, right? So if you don't get your goods in time where they need to be, the consumer will go to someone else, right? So they will need to do whatever they can to actually make sure that the goods are on the shelves where they want them. And on the one hand, obviously, the easy one is to look at transit times and to look at what is the fastest or the best way to get my goods there. But at the same time, specifically when you have a lot of different products and the products are changing all the time, then customs plays a big role in that, right? So, and if you have, like all these changes happening in your process, again, if there's a lot of manual processes going on and a lot of documents stored in different places, the probability of an error is quite large, and this will cause massive delays, right? Because of misdeclared goods or goods that are held by customs, etc. So that will cause definitely further delays. So again, like a good example of how you could see how you could speed up, let's say, your response to the market by implementing digitization processes.
All right. And sorry. And the third one.
Yeah, third one is then I think this is a very clear one as well, or recognizable. One company growing very fast, different ERP systems in their different entities in the different markets, works very well for the local entity, works terrible if you want to get a global picture of what's going on. So again, the network effect there is extremely important. You can think of that one big bang approach, where you say, like, I'm going to wipe out all of those different ERP systems and come up with another one, probably very costly and also very time consuming. Another option is like, hey, can you actually make sure to link those different systems together? Can we let them talk to each other, and then also talk to, let's say, the platform that we have? So that has created a solution which is very hands-on, which is very practical, and actually served all of the purposes there.
Yeah.
At the same time, the entire tracking team can be repurposed, and so one of the elements that I mentioned in why digitalization is not happening or lagging behind is because many companies forget to further automate a lot of parts of their processes, right? And it's mind-boggling to see that there's still tracking teams out there who are, like, trying to find out in different sources where their cargo or where their goods sit, right? And they spend hours on this. This is a process that should be completely automated, obviously. So that's also what we've done here, and where we've helped them with.
So in the food and beverage world, you see a lot of acquisitions of smaller manufacturing companies, like this example. So this is quite common, and especially in the food and beverage world. But I think in a lot of markets, you see, smaller, promising companies being acquired, and then that should be integrated in a larger company, and then you get this kind of headaches.
Yeah, and in that
Yeah,
segment, in the food and beverage segment, you also see that the number of regulations,
yeah,
certifications is going through the roof. So all of the latest and greatest of what needs to happen with those goods and which certifications are important, they need to
yeah,
be stored centrally.
yeah.
Otherwise, you will lose every control.
Yeah, and I think that there, also other industries have this kind of regulation, but especially in the food and beverage world, it's also with differences per country. You can have this kind of complexities. So, maybe can you explain what sets the leaders apart from the
Yeah,
pack?
so I think like what's important here is that digitalization is something that you really need to approach in a holistic manner. And what I mean with that is you need to focus on the three elements which are very important there. The first part, which makes sense, is the digitization, right? So that is actually creating a digital representation of physical objects or attributes, etc. So making sure that the data is readily available.
Hmm.
Very important first part. Don't need to do it all at once. You can actually take a little bit of a stepped approach there. At the same time, you have to make sure that you automate, right? So that you let the data work for you, so that the digitized data is actually helping you to automate the processes. If you only focus on digitization and not on automation, then you miss out, and your strategy is probably not going to work. last but not least, you need to constantly look at, how can I make sure that as many players as possible in my supply chain, both internally as well as externally, are linked and added to my digitalization strategy. That doesn't need to happen from the get-go, again, and also the examples that I just shared show that all of them take a very, phased approach in that, and every time they tackle a different topic. But you do need to look at these three elements in the same manner. If
Yeah.
you skip one of them, then the impact of your digitalization strategy is going to drastically decrease.
Yeah. So it has to be in parallel, and also when you have when you need to create a business case, you have to look at it holistically and not part by part.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe and go quickly through the different levels of automation and digitalization. Maybe you can explain it, and also next to this slide, you have examples in your world. So maybe you
Yeah.
can explain it just briefly, and then we go to your world more in depth.
Yeah, so one of the elements that I mentioned why, let's say, some parties are lagging behind, or why it's not working, is also a lack of talent. And I think, Martijn, you mentioned this as well, in previous webinars, or at least also in articles that you have. There's a lack of talent in our industry. We need to have, obviously, people who understand what's going on in freight forwarding, in business, in global trade. They need to understand, what is happening there. But at the same time, they also need to be problem solvers, and at the same time, they also need to be super good with data.
Mhm.
And that combination is not an easy one. And then you can do two things. One is you can make sure that you develop and hire the right people there, um, which is not impossible, but it's definitely a difficult one. But you can also make sure that you let the data work for you. So instead of that, you have people actually crunching that data and making sure that they draw their own analysis from it, that
Mhm.
you let the data actually tell you what needs to happen. And those are the three phases that are on this slide. So when you look at data analysis, you start with the descriptive part. What happened, right? That's the easy part. You look at the data, you gather the data, and you actually, present it in a bite-sized manner. Then the next step is, so what will happen? Can I use the data to forecast, to show what is going to happen? For that, you need to have larger amount of data, and specifically also historical data to spot trends there. But then you get to the predictive part already. The next step is actually the prescriptive part. So then you actually say, like, I know what's going to happen. So what should I do? What do I need to do right now? So actually, you want the data to tell you exactly, what, your individuals need to do. And then, to your point, it's very important to keep that human element in there, so that, everyone needs to keep their thinking hat up on, obviously, and then see, like, does this make sense or not? But you can at least use the data to steer people in a specific direction on what they need to do and what they need to take into account. And I can maybe explain that with an example of how we're doing that internally. So we're doing air freight, we're doing ocean freight, road, etc. But for our ocean products, we obviously need to rely on also the information that we get from carriers, etc. And what we try to do there is we try to see, okay, what's happening here actually. So can we actually digitize or standardize all of the live sailing schedules that are out there? So we know that there's different carriers out there, and they all have different services. And we would like to understand a little bit better, like, what are the different sailing schedules that we have there. We use different sources, right? So you always have to use multiple sources, because that's the only way to make sure that you don't use dirty data, and
Mhm.
that you can clean the data. And then we can start, analyzing that data. So that's the first part, the what happens. That's the very easy part.
Yep.
And then you can go to the predictive part, and then you can say, like, okay, what will happen? And then you can compare, let's say, the pro forma scheduled transit times with the actual sailing schedules based on that past performance. So you use all of that data, and you can actually then start to predict which of those published transit times are actually close to reality and which are not. So interestingly, as you can see here on the example, there's a few let's say services that pro forma on the when you look at the carrier published transit time look pretty okay. Um, but if you then look at the actuals, one looks better than the other, and the other one actually looks pretty in line with what they're publishing. So you can use this data actually to predict, like what are those, like which of those services is actually the best for me. So that's the second stage. Then you go to the third stage, which is like, okay, now let's use that data even further. You as a customer have a product, right? You tell when you need to get your cargo where, and actually we let the data tell us based on the historical data, based on the forecast that we have, and we combine all of that, and then we can say like, for your product and when you need to have it, actually an economy service is perfect, right? And then you're trying to use the data to actually steer the conversation on what needs to happen. And then we're getting obviously to an interesting stage of letting the data work for you in the best possible way.
If look at this slide, I think the future will be more customer segmentation. What does the end customer, even consumers, really want? Do they want it very quickly? Is it priority, or do they want standard economy? So it's like in the air freight, as a consumer flying to whatever, you have different levels. But I think that will, also be integrated more and more into the supply chain, in global supply chains. And now these are fragmented tracks in the whole chain. But I think, with this kind of platform, you can prioritize certain goods and also certain customers better and more.
Yeah, yeah. And if you have that complete network, almost like for air freight, for consolidation, for LCL, for ocean freight, exactly, and you have a very good, reliable data on and a good infrastructure there. In the end, as a customer, you don't even need to talk anymore about I need to get 30 pallets of these goods on this service flying from Shanghai to Frankfurt. You can actually go into the situation where you say like, I need to have like X number of speakers of this type in my warehouse in Rotterdam at this date. Why
Yeah,
don't you arrange that it's going to be there in the fastest, most reliable, and cost efficient way?
yeah,
And then you're not talking about the freight modality anymore. We will take care of that using the
yeah,
data, and we will see if we need to fly it, we need to sea, air, or ocean, or train, or whatever.
yeah,
That's I think an interesting future state.
yeah. Good point. Maybe to wrap up before we get to Q&A. So where to begin this journey?
Yeah, yeah. I think like a couple of no-brainers here, but it's like the first one is very simple, right? I think it's very important to start with relatively low risk or low entry barrier investments. I think that's a very important one. So the examples that we've given there as well are from companies that say like, like we're just going to start. We're going to focus on this specific element of our supply chain. We're going to see if we can digitize and further automate that, and then we're going to continue, right? For instance, if they work with us, there's no other investment required, right? So everyone can use our platform. It's free, like it's not something that they need to invest in, that they need to buy licenses for. It's just part of the package, I would say. So it's an
Mhm.
easy way to get started, actually. So that's definitely the first one. Then the second one is um, what we see is that a lot of companies are specifically looking at gains or cost savings within their teams for, let's say, the procurement team or whatsoever. It's important to actually look a little bit outside of that as well, of what the impact is going to be, for instance, on finance teams or on sales organizations, because like your lost revenue will be less. So looking at a little bit more in an integral way to your whole organization and the impact out of your supply chain teams, I think that is definitely an important one to take into account if you want to let's say propose a compelling digitalization strategy within your company. And then the last one is like innovation, the processes. It's very important, but it's the people in the end. It's the combination between the processes and the people that makes the combination lethal. That is the important one. You still need to have humans who actually interact with the data and use the data. So you can never rely completely on data, on processes, on computer says X or whatsoever. So the combination of those two is very, very important. You can help them, right? The example of letting the data work for you, that is definitely one that is helping there. But the combination of those two is a must have there.
Okay. So maybe a few years ago we created an end-to-end supply chain visibility self-assessment long term together with Unilever, Henkel, J&J, and HP Inc. Basically, with the help of 90 questions, you can find out where your white spots are or your gaps. Is it upstream? Is it internally, downstream? Is it operational? Tactical, strategic. So 90 questions, 30 boxes, yes, no, quite simple, and you can assess where your blind spots are or your white spots. So basically, I think within the global trade or your international logistics, I would say you know where you have your biggest headaches. So I think that's the part where you should start. And basically, I think you shouldn't start with your whole portfolio. You start with one SKU, one product group. Aren't you agree?
Exactly. I think
Yeah.
that's it. It's very important to do that. And the questions is definitely a good one. We also do quick scans where we
Mhm.
actually do scoping sessions. Let's look at your processes. Let's look at your response strategies. Let's look at your cost control, and let's see where we currently see the biggest gap. And let's focus on those elements first.
Yeah, and the second part with the business case, I think, can take it as wide as possible. Take all things in consideration. Also, the whole working capital intensity of it all. And the third part is also what can you save in time with this kind of solution.
Yeah.
I see some questions popping in, so maybe first question I got from the audience: do you have also customers in life science? I think in healthcare company is so maybe can you yeah, do you have customers in life science?
Yeah, no, we do. I think what's important I think our business is that we don't oversell. So we actually tell everyone in our organization, be super honest about what we can do, but also what we cannot do.
Mhm.
We are definitely working in the life sciences and health sector. I have to say, like, if you go really deep into, let's say, a pharma cold chain, then I think that there's a lot of other players out right now who have mastered that. That is an area where I think we're not extremely comfortable with at the moment, but healthcare, 100%.
Yeah. Another question is, can you provide the digital transformation survey? So I think you are mentioning the assessment, or maybe they are referring to my assessment. But do you have a link to this assessment on your side, or is it
Yeah,
something
so I
easy?
think like we used a couple of also sources out there. We can definitely provide them. It's I think if you look at the slides, you can almost find them already. But we'll make sure that we have those sources in there as well.
So one final question from my side. I see some other questions in the chat, but um, you are in the digital freight forwarding arena, I would say. but there are also players more in the real-time transport visibility, also in multimodality. So we have Project 44, P44, and Forecasts and the likes. Are you connected, or how should I position those players to you?
Yeah, so indeed, these companies are focusing them specifically on the visibility part, right?
Yeah.
And connecting all of the different modules. If it's necessary, we can also connect with those players. Indeed, yeah. Needless to say, the functionality and the visibility that they have is, yeah, we have that on our platform as well. With on top of that, well, two additional things. Firstly, uh, no dirty data going in there, because we pay an awful lot of attention to making sure that the data is checked. And secondly, all of the actions that are taking place after you make it visible about what's actually happening with the goods are also visible there. So yeah, it's possible to connect to them, definitely. It's better actually to get a more comprehensive solution.
All right. So thanks for now. So right after this, we are already on the hour. So right after this, Matthias and myself will be on table one in the digital lounge. So maybe you will join us over there and have some further questions and conversation with us. So on the left hand side, you see me, and you see the IT super map with the representation of all the vendors I mentioned and way more. And there are a lot of flavors, ERP, and you name it. And on the right hand side, you see the contact details of Mathijs, and also there's a great link by Flexport of World Trade Indicators, so that gives you more flavor and some insight in what's happening in the world. So for now, I would like to thank Mathijs for joining us,
Thank you very much. Enjoyed
and
it.
the audience for watching and conversing with us. And like I said, this presentation will be made available within 48 hours, and also the recording will be made available. And thank you for now, and see you next time in a webinar, or maybe I see you later right after this in the digital lounge. See you. Bye bye.
Thank you.